Last day of last retreat I read from Wang Po, after not having done so for quite a while. And several people afterwards said it was really helpful. Actually, one person said, "Why don't you read it sometime the first day of retreat?" So then there would be something to sit on and to question. Well, the retreat is over, but one can continue sitting on Wang Po and question. And also we will have another, just about 2.5 weeks before we have another retreat. So during that time, there are meetings. During which we can discuss what Wang Po says, or brought up. For people who are not familiar with him, he was a Zen teacher of the 8th and 9th century in China. And these talks and dialogues were written down by his disciple, who was a scholar, Buddhist scholar, and also a government official. I don't read Wang Po on the last day of retreat sort of as the bottom line, to bring in some authority to, I don't know to what. People have asked me this is why I'm mentioning it. But it is relaxing for me not to have to think of what to talk about. And to read is more relaxing than to look and find words. Even though I don't mind that. But maybe it's nice for all of us to have a change of words. Somebody mentioned after last retreat, some of these words are hard for me to understand. They're not our customary vocabulary that one does build up if one regularly communicates with each other. But remember, we talked a lot about that the words are not the real thing. And so can one also be light with one's own words, not stuck with them, so that they can be easily let go in listening to some other words. Because these words point towards something that is not words. And if one can communicate on that level, then the words will not be a hindrance. Sometimes people have also said to me, when I pull out Wang Po to read it, it doesn't read the way you read it. There is a lot of editing that has gone on and is going on for each time I look through the things and maybe eliminate some words, phrases, paragraphs, pages. Also, Wang Po taught in the Buddhist tradition. Some of the words are the English equivalent is being used. The word Dharma, meaning teaching, truth, and phenomena. These English words are being used. The word Buddha is left in. Not only referring to the historical personage of the Buddha, but also to the Sanskrit meaning of the word truth, enlightenment, the absolute. And in the Buddhist tradition, to seek for the truth or to seek the absolute is often called seeking for the Buddha. or trying to become Buddha. The Master said to me, all the Buddhas and all sentient beings are nothing but the one mind. Here it is written with capital O and capital M, beside which nothing exists. This mind which is without beginning is unborn and indestructible. It is not green nor yellow and has neither form nor appearance. It does not belong to the categories of things which exist or do not exist, nor can it be thought of in terms of young or old. It is neither long nor short, big nor small, for it transcends all limits, measures, names, traces, and comparisons. It is that which you see before you. Begin to reason about it, and you at once fall into error. We talked a lot about naming, conceptualizing, reacting to what is simply seen. Begin to reason about it, you at once fall into error. It is like the boundless void which cannot be fathomed or measured. The one mind alone is the Buddha, and there's no distinction between the Buddha and sentient beings, but that sentient beings are attached to forms and so seek externally for Buddhahood. By their very seeking, they lose it, for that is using mind to grasp mind. Even though they do their utmost for a full eon, they will not be able to attain it. They do not know that if they put a stop to conceptual thought and forget their anxiety, the Buddha will appear before them. For this mind is Buddha, and Buddha is all living beings. It is not less for being manifested in ordinary beings, nor is it greater for being manifested in the Buddhas. Here is a question by Pesu, the scholar, disciple. When all the Buddhas manifest themselves in the world, they proclaim nothing but the one mind. Wait a minute, I forgot the question. The question was, what Dharma do all the Buddhas teach when they manifest themselves in the world? What teaching do they proclaim? What is their teaching as they manifest in the world? And Wang Po, when all the Buddhas manifest themselves in the world, they proclaim nothing but the one mind. Discuss it as you may, how can you ever hope to approach the truth through words? Nor can it be perceived either subjectively or objectively. So, full understanding can come to you only through an inexpressible mystery. The approach to it is called the gateway of the stillness beyond all activity. If you wish to understand, know that a sudden comprehension comes when the mind is purged of all the clutter of conceptual and discriminatory thought activity. Those who seek the truth by means of intellect and learning only get further and further away from it. Not till your thoughts cease all their branching here and there, not till you abandon all thoughts of seeking for something, not till the mind is motionless will you be on the right road. And the questioner asks, at this very moment, all sorts of erroneous thoughts are constantly flowing through our minds. How can you speak of our having none? And Wang Po, error has no substance. It is entirely the product of your own thinking. If you see that mind is the Buddha, and that mind is fundamentally without error, whenever thoughts arise, you will clearly see that they are responsible for the errors. If you could still all conceptual movements of thought and still your thinking processes, naturally there would be no error left in you. Therefore it is said, when thoughts arise, then do all things arise. When thoughts vanish, then do all things vanish. Allowing, as we often point out, that a physical emotion, state of pain, fear, anxiety, thought provoked, the thought may vanish, but what is happening in the body does not vanish at the snap of a finger, does not vanish when the thought has vanished. Body has its own rhythm, and can one allow it that rhythm without moving in on the symptom with opposition, resistance, anxiety, wishing it away. There being just what is going on in the body and no position taken. And the body will come to balance on its own. This is built in, unless it is diseased. Or new thoughts of worry about the symptoms will set it into further motion. The questioner continues, at this moment, while erroneous thoughts are arising in my mind, where is the Buddha? And Wang Po says, at this moment you're conscious of those erroneous thoughts. Well, your consciousness is the Buddha. Perhaps you can understand, were you but free of these delusory mental processes, there would be then no Buddha. Why so? Because when you allow a movement of your mind to result in a concept of the Buddha, you're bringing into existence an objective being capable of being enlightened. Similarly, any concept of sentient beings in need of deliverance creates such beings as objects of your thoughts. All intellectual processes and movements of thought result from your concepts. If you were to refrain from conceptualizing altogether, where would the Buddha continue to exist? You're in the same predicament as Manjusri, that was one of the Buddha's disciples, who, as soon as he permitted himself to conceive of the Buddha as an objective entity, was dwarfed and hemmed in on all sides by two iron mountains. Iron mountains of me and you, us and them. Questioner proceeds, at the moment of enlightenment, where is the Buddha? And Wang Po says, whence does your question proceed? Whence does your consciousness arise? Is one just asking questions, or does one look? Where does the question arise? Is that perceivable? Catchable? When speech is silenced, Wang Po continues, all mental movement stilled, then is the Buddha's work of deliverance truly going forth. Then where will you seek the Buddha? You cannot place a head upon your head or lips upon your lips. Rather, can you refrain from every kind of dualistic distinction? Wang Po says you should, but we'll put it into a question. Hills are hills, water is water, monks are monks, laymen are laymen. But these mountains, these rivers, the whole world itself, together with sun, moon, and stars, not one of them exists outside mind. Later on he says, you may talk the whole day through, yet what has been said? You may listen from dawn to dusk, yet what will you have heard? Thus, though Gautama Buddha preached for 49 years, in truth no word was spoken. After more discussion about what is enlightenment and unenlightenment, non-enlightenment, ignorance, Wang Po says, how is it possible that Gautama Buddha, who denied all such views, could have originated the present conceptions of enlightenment? But as these doctrines are still commonly taught, people become involved in the duality of longing for light and eschewing darkness. In their anxiety to seek enlightenment on the one hand, and to escape from the passions and ignorance of corporal existence on the other, they conceive of an enlightened Buddha and unenlightened sentient beings as separate entities. Let me assure you, again, that the Buddha dwells not in light, nor sentient beings in darkness, for the truth allows no such distinctions. Buddha is not mighty, nor sentient beings feeble, for the truth allows no such distinctions. The Buddha is not enlightened, nor sentient beings ignorant, for the truth allows no such distinctions. It is all because you take it upon yourself of explaining Zen. As soon as the mouth is opened, evils spring forth. And later on, when a sudden flash of thought occurs in your mind, and you see it for a dream or an illusion, then you can enter into the state reached by the Buddhas of the past. Not that the Buddhas of the past really exist, or that the Buddhas of the future have not yet come into existence. Above all, have no longing to become a future Buddha. Your sole concern should be, as thought succeeds thought, to avoid clinging to any of them. He goes on, says, nor may you entertain the least ambition to be a Buddha here and now. Even if a Buddha arises, do not think of him as enlightened or deluded, good or evil. Hasten to rid yourself of any desire to cling to him. Cut him off in the twinkling of an eye. On no account seek to hold him fast, for 1,000 locks could not stay him, nor 100,000 feet of rope bind him. This being so, valiantly strive to banish and annihilate him. I will now make luminously clear how to set about being rid of that Buddha. Consider the sunlight. You may say it is near, yet if you follow it from world to world, you will never catch it in your hands. Then you may describe it as far away, and lo, you will see it just before your eyes. Follow it, and behold, it escapes you. Run from it, and it follows you close. You can neither possess it nor have done with it. From this example, you can understand how it is with the true nature of all things, and henceforth there will be no need to grieve or to worry about such things. Later he says, thus all the visible universe is the Buddha. So are all sounds. Hold fast to one principle, and all the others are identical. On seeing one thing, you see all. On perceiving any individual's mind, you are perceiving all mind. Mind here with a capital M. The perception of one individual's mind, one grain of dust, one drop of water, as he talks about, is whole. It's not me there in the middle of it, wanting something, wanting understanding, or afraid of not understanding. Obtain a glimpse of one way, and all ways are embraced in your vision, for there is nowhere at all which is devoid of the way. When your glance falls upon a grain of dust, what you see is identical with all the vast world systems with their great rivers and mighty hills. To gaze upon a drop of water is to behold the nature of all the waters of the universe. Moreover, in thus contemplating the totality of phenomena, you are contemplating the totality of mind. All these phenomena are intrinsically void, and yet this mind with which they are identical is no mere nothingness. By this I mean that it does exist, but in a way too marvelous for us to comprehend. So this true void does in some marvelous way exist. Another point he says, all this talk of Bodhi, Nirvana, the Absolute, the Buddha nature, Mahayana, Theravada, Bodhisattvas, and so on, is like taking autumn leaves for gold. To use the symbol of the closed fist, when it is opened, all beings, both gods and men, will perceive there is not a single thing inside. Therefore it is written, there has never been a single thing. So where is the defiling dust to cling? It goes on, if there has never been a single thing, past, present, and future are meaningless. So those who seek the way must enter it with the suddenness of a knife thrust. And later, when the moment of understanding comes, do not think in terms of understanding. Now I understand. Or not understanding, or not understanding. For none of these is something to be grasped. None of this is something to be grasped. This truth, this thusness, when grasped, is grasped, but he who grasps it is no more conscious of having done so than someone ignorant of it is conscious of his failure. I'll read this again. It sounds complicated, but it is not if one listens carefully. When the moment of understanding comes, do not think in terms of understanding, not understanding, or not understanding. For none of this is something to be grasped. The truth of thusness when grasped, is grasped. But he who grasps it is no more conscious of having done so than someone ignorant of it is conscious of his failure. This dharma of thusness, he goes on, until now so few people have come to understand it, that it is written, in this world how few are they who lose their egos. As for those people who seek to grasp it through the application of some particular principle, or by creating a special environment, or through some scripture or doctrine, or age, or time, or name, or word, or through their six senses, how do they differ from wooden dolls? Later on he says, refrain from seeking Buddhahood, since any search is doomed to failure. Some madman shrieking on the mountaintop, on hearing the echo far below, may go to seek it in the valley. But oh, how vain his search! Once in the valley, he shrieks again, and straightway climbs to search it among the peaks. Why, he may spend 1,000 rebirths or 10,000 eons searching for the source of those sounds by following their echoes. Far better that you make no sound, for then there will be no echo. No knowing, no sound, no track, no trace. Here's a discussion of this principle of seeing into the real nature. Actually, this Japanese word kensho, which at one time people who were practicing in Rinzai Zen were so deeply impressed with this word and the experience or anticipation of experience. This word means seeing into the nature. Nature always capitalized. The truth meaning the truth. Not seeing what is imagined to be there, what is thought to be there. And Pei-Su asks, what is implied by seeing into the real nature? And Wang Po says that nature and your perception of it are one. You can also say it is the seeing which is the true nature. Not seeing something. That's duality. It's a seer and what is seen. The seeing being the true nature, if we use those words. And he says that nature and your perception of it are one. You cannot use it to see something over and above itself. That nature and your hearing of it are one. You cannot use it to hear something over and above itself. If you form a concept of the true nature of anything as being visible or audible, you allow division to arise. Let me repeat that the perceived cannot perceive. Can there, I ask you, be a head attached to the crown of your head? He says here, imagine some loose pearls in a bowl, some large globules, and some small. None causes the least obstruction to the rest. During their formation, they did not say, now I am coming into being. And when they begin to decay, they will not say, now I am decaying. None of the beings born, now we'll leave the 6 forms of life out. Gets too involved. He goes on, so why this talk of I see, I hear, I receive an intuition through enlightenment, I hear the truth from the lips of an enlightened one, I, or any of the Buddhas appearing in the world to preach the Dharma? I assure you that all things have been free from bondage since the very beginning. We sometimes in meetings talk about this when it comes up. Truth has always been there, or awareness is always there. And we question that when this is brought up. How can one say that? Actually, the way the mind works, whatever is there, when it's lots of thoughts, one thinks thoughts have always been there and will always be there. That's a thought itself. It is a thought process. And when there's awareness, interrupted by thought and awareness again, then the thought comes up, awareness is always there. Why does one say that? First of all, is it a thought? One has to examine that. Or is there a realization that this is so? Or does thought say it is so? And then why does thought say that? And there one has to look very subtly. Is there again a desire to cling to something that will always be there? Then can one see that desire immediately, or once it has started branching out, one can still see it, one can see it any time. So that desire doesn't fill the mind, desire for the alwaysness of things, but there's a tension again, whether always or not. It sounds so reassuring, doesn't it, to hear, I assure you that all things have been free from bondage since the very beginning. We used to recite it every morning. Does that resting in the assurance said by a great master or a Buddha then take the place of looking? And why does the assurance come up and is held on to? Does it prevent looking at fear? Fear of being nothing in the beginning and nothing in the end. Not the idea of it, but looking, listening, in an openness that is undefended, non-resisting. Therefore very vulnerable. Vulnerably open. He says, the absolute is thusness. How can it be discussed? You people still conceive of mind as existing or not existing, as pure or defiled, as something to be studied in the way that one studies a piece of categorical knowledge, or as a concept. The man who perceives things always wants to identify them, to get a hold on them. Those who use their minds like eyes in this way are sure to suppose that progress is a matter of stages. If you're that kind of person, you're as far from truth as heaven is far from earth. So why this talk of seeing into your own nature? And Pessu comes back. You say that our original nature and the act of seeing into it are one and the same. This can only be so if that nature is totally undifferentiated. Pray explain how it is that even allowing that there are no real objects for us to perceive, nevertheless we do in fact see what is near to us and are unable to see what is far away. Seeing here, meaning the optical process of seeing. See, one hears a statement like, in seeing one drop of water, one sees all the waters of all the oceans on the earth or in the cosmos, if there are indeed oceans anyplace else. And then the thought may arise, how can I get such a magical vision that if I see this drop, I also see the Pacific Ocean? Because we want magic. We want something superhuman. What he's saying is that water is water. And seeing is seeing, whether it's water or dust, polluted or unpolluted. Here he just said, how come we can see what's near and can't see what's beyond the hills there? Dansville, can't see it. And Wang Po says this is due to a misunderstanding arising from your own delusions. The nature of the Absolute is neither perceptible nor imperceptible. And with phenomena it is just the same. But to one who has discovered his real nature, how can there be anything anywhere separate from it? How can there be anywhere, he says, spatial separation, that's what he means. Separation. Thus, the 6 forms of life, together with the great world systems of the universe, with their rivers and mountains, are all of one pure substance with our own nature. Okay, that's what is that substance. Even the physicists say emptiness, mostly emptiness and different forms of energy, different intensities of energy, and the sound of silence. Therefore it is said, the perception of a phenomenon is the perception of the universal nature, since phenomena and mind are one and the same. There's nothing to be understood through thinking. It has to be come upon as being so. To a mind that isn't locked up into preserving this splendid isolation, the solitary confinement that we live in, through our thoughts and images and desires and fears. It is only because you cling to outward forms that you come to see, hear, feel, and know things as individual entities. Cling through making thoughts and images of it that one then can bring up in memory. True perception is beyond your powers so long as you indulge in these. I assure you there is no inner or outer or near or far. The fundamental nature of all phenomena is close beside you, but you do not even see that. Yet you will still go on talking of your inability to see what is far away. What meaning can this sort of talk possibly have? Questioner says, then how does a man accomplish this comprehension of his own mind? And Wang Po says, that which asked the question is your own mind. But if you were to remain quiescent and refrain from the smallest mental activity, its substance would be seen as a void. You would find it formless, occupying no point in space, and falling neither into the category of existence nor of that of non-existence. Mind, which is our real nature, is the unbegotten and indestructible womb. In response to circumstances, it transforms itself into phenomena. For the sake of convenience, we speak of mind as the intelligence. But when it does not respond to circumstances, it cannot be spoken of in such dualistic terms as existence and non-existence. Therefore, it is said, develop a mind which rests on no thing whatsoever. Every one of the sentient beings bound to the wheel of alternating life and death is recreated from his own desires. If only you would learn how to achieve a state of non-intellection, immediately the chain of causation would snap. One can question is an experiment. Find out when there is sitting, a desire comes up, it is seen, and it ceases. Particularly when it's seen in its very early stages, so it hasn't set the whole organism into motion. We've talked about that, how much longer it takes, and while that takes longer time, new thoughts spawn from this aroused organism. New desires, either for more arousal or for the cessation of the arousal. So, in sitting, a desire about to arise or the thought has arisen, seeing it and being done with it. there just being not a thing, then where is cause and where is effect? Desire arising becomes a cause when it's not seen. When it's seen, it doesn't become a cause for an effect. It's seen and it's finished. If it's not seen, each desire has an effect. What I want, imagining it going out after it. So can a movement of the mind that comes up be seen so that it does not become the cause of an effect? And that coming out of wondering, not I must avoid any further effects. That's already a cause of a certain behavior. Effect. He goes on and says, give up those erroneous thoughts leading to false distinctions. There is no self. There is no self and no other. These are in quotation marks. There is no wrong desire, no anger, no hatred, no like, no dislike, no victory, no failure. Does one agree with that? Can one examine what the nature of quote-unquote failure is? Whether it has to do with comparison, thought, desire, disappointment, and so forth. The event itself that gives rise to these thoughts, is that a success or a failure if it is not compared, if it's not known, if it's just allowed to peter out? You could say, well, not all failures peter out. I may have been fired from a job. Can one start right there without spending endless hours of self-recrimination or other accusal over failure? Start afresh with all this energy that's saved from brooding over failure. And because I've always been a failure, the likelihood is much greater now I'll be a failure again, and so forth. How does one know? And how does one know whether these thoughts don't bring upon the next failure, whatever that is? What is it? Anything invites to look in a fresh way, doesn't it? If one isn't totally caught up in the content and in the, how society and parents and friends and teachers define events for one, including oneself, what one has absorbed or built up for oneself from reading and so forth. He goes on, only renounce the error of intellectual or conceptual thought processes, and your nature will exhibit its pristine purity. Unless you understand this, the whole of your great learning, your painful efforts to advance, your austerities of diet and clothing will not help you to a knowledge of your own mind. Knowledge does not mean here accumulated, remembered psychological knowledge, but insight, seeing, understanding. all such practices must be termed fallacious. What end is served by pursuits like these? Our bodies are the creations of our own minds. But how can one expect to gain such knowledge from books? Here he says again, truth is something never lost to you even in moments of delusion, nor is it gained at the moment of enlightenment. Depends on nothing and is attached to nothing. It is all-pervading, spotless beauty. It is the self-existent and uncreated absolute. So much for all these words. And he says, it is a jewel beyond all price. And with this, does one set up something again? An ideal to be attained? Or just open up to this moment of not knowing? We will end here for today.